From the KELOLAND Digital Desk, meteorologist Scott Mundt. This is Weather or Not for Monday, March 2nd. We had the snow over the weekend in northeastern South Dakota. Heavy snow at that. Some of the snowfall reports coming in at over 5 inches in parts of northeastern South Dakota from Aberdeen to Watertown. Redfield, you can throw in a good 3 to maybe even 5 inches of snowfall there. I know Brian was driving through Redfield this weekend and even said he probably ran through a couple of areas even closer to 6 inches. So nothing like that in our forecast for today. We are talking rain showers and warmer temperatures. This is Futurecast, and you notice that warm front that stretched across northern Nebraska. We'll have the warm, more moist air override that into South Dakota. So we'll try to get that to deposit in the form of rain showers in southwestern to south central South Dakota. We'll see how long they take to move across in the eastern KELOLAND. Late afternoon, early evening, I think is a good timeline for that, for these rain showers in southeastern South Dakota. They'll remain light. Accumulations, I think for a lot of us, will stay less than 1/10 of an inch. There will be a couple of exceptions, maybe found across southwestern South Dakota. They can get another round of rain for tomorrow morning. And notice that for tomorrow, a lot of this is trying to set up south of Interstate 90. But we'll continue maybe that 20% chance for a rain shower. And then after that, dry skies Wednesday, dry skies Thursday, as temperatures warm, well above average. Midweek, Wednesday into Thursday, we may see numbers in the middle 60s in southeastern KELOLAND by Thursday. Southerly winds today, that will help us warm, even though we'll have thicker clouds during the day. We can see wind gusts over 20 miles per hour as those winds continue to come in from the south. And as we get into the late evening hours, same thing. Some of those wind speeds still in that 20-mile-per-hour range for those higher gusts across eastern KELOLAND. You can see for today, we'll have temperatures warmer than what we had yesterday. Numbers near 40 in northeastern South Dakota. We'll have our temperatures probably in the 50s to near 60 degrees in central and western South Dakota. Forecast for tonight, mostly cloudy, on and off rain shower. Still in the forecast. We'll have to watch these temperatures that are around 30 degrees, central South Dakota. In case we do get some drizzle, light rain showers, we could have pockets of freezing drizzle or freezing rain late tonight toward tomorrow morning. And then you see here for tomorrow, temperatures will reach the 40s, 50s, and 60s. We have plenty to talk about on this edition of Weather or Not. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back after this. Talk about some of these February numbers because of the very dry conditions that some of us have had. Not everybody, but some of us have had very dry skies for the past month. And let's go ahead and jump right into some of those numbers for you as we'll concentrate here. Sioux Falls, Mitchell, I think I'll also bring in Pierre and Rapid City. But for the month of February, only 0.03 of an inch of precipitation in Sioux Falls. That's the third driest on record, and you see the snow came in at half an inch, and that also is the third least on record when you're looking at snowfall. Mitchell, 1/100th of an inch. That's the second driest. I think the record is a trace. And you see that was our snowfall for the month. A trace in Mitchell, of course, the record being 0, as we'll bring in Pierre and Rapid City, too. You see more or less the same thing when you're looking at these numbers, precipitation at 0.05 or less. I want to talk about some of these February numbers because of the very dry conditions that some of us have had. Not everybody, but some of us have had very dry skies the first half of the weekend on Saturday. And I am showing this because it's trying to bring in precipitation in the southeast that will easily, if we do get these thunderstorms overhead, we can easily go beyond what we've had already this year for amounts of precipitation. That's what the European model is thinking. Here's what the American model is thinking. As this does fill in, again, a lot of this comes in on Friday in southeastern South Dakota. Maybe not as widespread as what we were looking at with the European model, but it's still showing some precipitation across eastern and southeastern KELOLAND. Now, the average for the month in Sioux Falls is 1.6 when you look at just the precipitation. So we'll see how much we do get. If we get a thunderstorm overhead, again, I think we'll easily pass the precipitation we've had combined for the past 2 months, which I think is just, it's less than a quarter of an inch. I don't remember the number offhand. It might be 1,800ths total, 17 from January and just the 100th we had, or a couple of hundredths we had for this month. So anyway you look at it, very, very light over the past 2 months. And we may rival that or get beyond it as we do go into Thursday night and Friday, especially if you get some of these thunderstorms to go. The Storm Prediction Center, we'll continue to follow what's coming out of the Storm Prediction Center as we go through this week. Here's their outlook for Thursday. And I went ahead and put that low-pressure system in Colorado, too. They're highlighting, looks like Oklahoma, northern Texas, chance for severe weather. That's on Thursday. Now, Friday, I put the low-pressure system northeastern Nebraska, and we'll continue to follow where that's expected to go as the days do get closer. But they're outlined right now, southern Iowa, looks like northwestern Missouri, eastern Kansas. I really think that this will probably change closer to us. I would not be surprised if we do get a severe weather outlook issued sometime this week for Friday, whether it starts tomorrow or maybe it's later in the week. I can't answer that question. But again, I would not be surprised if we do get some sort of outlook for severe weather as issued by the Storm Prediction Center as we get into the later part of this week. So we'll continue to follow that information, what the models are saying with it, and we will share that with you too, even today when we're joined by meteorologist Brian Karstens. He's coming up next. Stay with us. You're watching Weather or Not. Welcome back to Weather or Not, being joined by meteorologist Brian Karstens. And Brian, how was your weekend? You traveled through some snow, didn't you?
I did, yeah. We went. We actually traveled all the way to Aberdeen, South Dakota, for a gymnastics tournament, and the girls had fun. And we had. We took a different way. I usually take Interstate 29 and go west on Highway 12 through Webster, but obviously, given the weather, I was like, well, no, let's go up 281. Let's do that route. And that proved to be a much better choice because we didn't hit the snow until Redfield. Redfield had a lot of piles of snow. And then on the way up the rest of the way, by the time we got there, it was about 12, maybe it was after 1, between 1 and 2 at that point. But it was doable, and then it snowed off and on the rest of the afternoon. We ended up taking the route back on 12 and then went down 29 because by that point the roads were pretty good shape, actually.
Okay, good. Good.
Worked out pretty well, but while it's snowing, it's just never fun to drive through that stuff.
No, especially if you get behind a semi or something like that, blowing that snow around. But
exactly.
Good idea, staying safe and taking a different route. Probably saved you some time, too.
I think it did.
Would have ran through more traffic on maybe 29.
Yep. I took my own advice. I looked at I knew what we were forecasting and the snow band and the orientation of that. That's why it's always good if you're traveling, you kind of watch these weather maps. It gives you some good insight. Not always perfect, but at least it gives you some ideas to work off of. And that was a narrow band of snow. It was not wide, but if you were right in the middle of it, you used your snowblower.
Oh, yeah. I mean, snowfall amounts 4, 5, 6 inches. I think we had a couple even close to 8.
Yep, that hyper-local reinforcing with those features. But, our conversation this week is going to go the other way. We're going to start talking about some spring elements. I wanted to bring this up first and foremost because what we're watching this week is the connection to some deeper moisture to our south. And this is going to feed into a lot of rain in the pattern across the southern plains. You notice as we kick off the week here, this is a fast-forwarded look at Tuesday's weather map, and we already have a clear connection to Gulf moisture moving up. You can see the arrows pointing right out of Texas into Missouri. Now, notice that initially this does not connect to South Dakota, does it?
No.
See how the arrows end there, and they actually bend the other way?
And we have light showers for today, maybe tonight, even lasting into tomorrow. But it's not deep moisture until we hit the later part of the week. And I talked about maybe some thunderstorm chances late in the week. Strong to severe weather, looking possible, depending on how things do set up. But look at that connection all the way down to the Gulf. Just follow those arrows up all the way in the eastern, southeastern South Dakota.
Isn't that impressive? Start at the Yucatan Peninsula. Look at the arrows. Look at that. They go all the way to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Now, it's not like we're talking about a long period of that deep of a connection, but the fact of the matter is we've got modeling today that is already forecasting dew points near 60 in Omaha, Nebraska, and that's a big deal for early March. You've got to think about that for a moment. If that's really what's going to happen here by Thursday, well, we'll say into Friday, that's probably the target day. This begins to open up a lot of possibilities to the weather. We're examining the chances of rain, how much severe weather will start to happen in the plains, where is that going to be located. And a lot of those are discussion points we can bring up on a Monday just to kind of get our brains thinking about that subject matter. It's too early to bark exact scenarios. I know you mentioned the SPC wording here a little bit ago, and that's good that they're on record as already forecasting some of this. I do want to play this out, and then I'll switch to another map here in a moment. But this, hit of moisture, it kind of retreats a little bit maybe for the weekend, and then there's another door opening right in here. Now, we'll see what happens. That's, again, out maybe Tuesday of next week. Possibility we catch some more moisture, and then maybe a bigger substantial change in the weather pattern again toward mid-March. Now, I'm going to hit the play button on this one. This is our dew point forecast. Okay, so this is a little deeper meteorology, but I do think this is a good opportunity to discuss this because what we're noticing here as we go through the week, our dew point is generally increasing. Now, at first value, Scott, we've got some 40s on the maps through Nebraska, Iowa, South Dakota, Minnesota. Just decent amount of moisture for early March. But what really grabs my attention is this 60 down in Omaha. And I want to see what happens with the data sets that come out later today, the data sets that we deal with tomorrow. Right now, we're kind of invested in this European model scenario, but you pointed out to me as well, the American counterpart, pretty similar, isn't it?
It is. It has generally the same idea. It's just a matter of where these things do line up. But it is bringing in higher dew point temperatures. The numbers aren't exactly the same. They will vary as they should be in a different model. But you notice those wind arrows. So as you hit the play button, notice those wind arrows coming in from the north. That's that drier air. And before you hit that play button, you had Omaha at 60, and you had 30s there in central Nebraska. That's that dry punch of air. And then, depending on where the storm track goes, we get that dry punch of air to go through northeastern Nebraska. We could see thunderstorms easily erupt in parts of southeastern KELOLAND.
That's right.
As that dry punch comes in. So, it's looking very interesting on paper. Again, interesting is a word I think we use way too often.
Yeah, it's kind of a placeholder for things where, we're just putting that as a point of conversation. Okay, so just to let
I like
you know,
the way that looks.
Yeah, now let's look at this. What do we have going on here? Well, if you take this at face value, you've got thunderstorms in southeast South Dakota. Now, why is the model developing thunderstorms there? Well, that has to do with your elevated front, okay? These are what we call elevated thunderstorms. And what does that mean? Well, it means we're disconnected to some degree probably to the low level, although there is definitely some features there too that are warm and definitely more moisture-laden, if you will. but this is a pretty decent amount of rainfall. That conveyor belt I just showed that goes all the way to the Gulf, well, guess what happens at the end of the conveyor belt? You get rain. You can get some, and if you get a front that focuses there, which you can see the surface winds are converging, aren't they? See that? South winds on one side, north winds on the other. And so there's definitely some intriguing points in there. Now, do we live and die by one model run? No. You can't do that. As meteorologists, we know better, but we also know that the concept is definitely here. So can this waffle a little bit? Just, you've always got to remember last week when we had how many conversations about that snow ban?
Right.
And how many times did you say, Scott, that watch for this thing to go south? And no model picked up on that to any great degree, except what verified, what actually happened. That's why Brookings and Redfield got caught up in this a little more on Saturday.
At the last minute, everything pushed down to the south.
And that theory was based on your observation, and I concur. I agree with that. So when we fast forward to a scenario like this, that's still, what, 4 days out, 5 days out, when I looked at this morning, and I'll tell this audience this, okay, because you're watching this program. I went back in my mind to 1998 and the Comfrey St. Peter tornado day. Now, I don't know how many of you in the audience remember that, but that was my first, I think it was my first storm chase I ever did.
And you were in college.
I was at college. Yeah, I was at Iowa State that day. It was later in March. That was toward the end of March, not early March. But we had a scenario where we had a lot of deep Gulf moisture coming up from the south. We had temperatures in the 70s and 80s in much of Iowa, but we had a warm front that was straddled near I-90 that day. And there was a moderate risk from the Storm Prediction Center. So think of that, moderate risk, and it was March. And in that day, of course, I remember we went actually west of Ames. We actually went clear out to Interstate 29 and thought we were going to get tornadoes on the dry line that day, coming up out of eastern Nebraska. None of that happened. It was blue sky. We didn't see one storm. Everything focused on the warm front that day. And those tornadoes, of course, Comfrey, St. Peter, we talk about that. There were significant supercells that developed on that warm front.
Do you still have that surface map that you were looking at this morning?
You know,
if you don't have it now, we could show that tomorrow.
I should try to find. Yeah, and this is stuff we can bring up all week. And I'm not bringing this up just, to get people worried about tornadoes, but I do think that we've been here long enough.
We use it as a background to help us forecast.
Yeah, and the European model this morning, based on the raw data, it has 75 degrees in Sioux City.
Oh, here
on Friday. And I think you've got, wow, yeah, there you go.
There it is.
Just speaking of it. So let's say this is close, okay? It doesn't have to be exact. Maybe it shifts north. Maybe it shifts a little to the south. We don't know yet. But the idea is there that you've got warm, humid air colliding with, and not just that, but the jet streak, the mid-level atmospheric wind profile too, Scott, is really impressive on this today. Now, is it going to continue that this week? That's the hard part about meteorology. We have pieces here. Yeah, that's what you're looking at. This dark red, that's your mid-level jet streak. That's over 80 knots at 500 millibars. So that's that halfway slice. To me, just using my experience,
that's Friday evening.
Where does that go? Well, if you cut all that out and that doesn't change, there will be a tornado outbreak in parts of the plains. And you can go back on this show that we talked about this on Monday, and I think that's where this would go, but will the data change? And that's where, again, we'll continue to monitor this. But I am very impressed by this raw data today, given all of those parameters. But this is mainly an issue for the very far southeast. It's also worth noting the snow that can develop on the backside of this. And that, too, is just starting to get barked at a little bit in the Black Hills and into central South Dakota. It's March playbooks.
And we know this. I would say it happens once, maybe twice a year, whether it's the fall or whether it's the spring.
Yep.
Bringing in, severe weather, eastern, southeastern KELOLAND, heavy snow, blizzards in the western South Dakota. And we'll see if this ends up happening later this week. If it does, I would not be surprised by any means.
And sometimes we don't get this much advanced warning either. I mean, we're on Monday, and we're looking at Friday's weather. So, I've seen cases where this stuff can happen really fast within a day or two. All of a sudden, you've got some major conditions. So keep watching the weather this week. We're going to keep you well ahead of it here with these conversations.
And keep watching this program as well.
Absolutely.
And we'll have enough time to wrap things up when we get back after the break. Stay with us. You're watching Weather or Not. Welcome back to Whether or Not. We'll just jump right into this next segment. I want to show this again. Going back to the Storm Prediction Center here, their outlook for Thursday. There's our low-pressure system that will get closer to KELOLAND on Friday. We'll just have to see where that goes, how much moisture gets in here from the south, and what happens with the drier air trying to come in with that low-pressure system as well. So that's Thursday. Friday right now, notice how it does nudge into southern Iowa for a severe weather outlook, northwestern Missouri, eastern Kansas, and again, would not be surprised to see that move a little bit farther to the north. I do want to show one more map here. This is the amount of energy that's in the atmosphere as that continues to show up. I think this is a map that we've been showing since last week, showing the energy in the atmosphere. I went ahead and labeled it as isolated storms. Timing of this still needs to be worked out, but we'll continue to follow it and give you the latest information with what we see kind of behind the scenes and what these models are showing too, Brian.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a work in progress. We know we're going to be above normal going into the front side of that system. Do we cool off a little bit this weekend and then recharge next week? And then that's where we kind of get into a cross point of what happens next because mid-March, and look at that, purple to the north.
Oh, boy.
So that signals winter's not quite over, is it? Well, we all know that. Mm-hmm. It's KELOLAND after all, and it's only halfway through March at that point. So.
And right now, Brian, I would label that as after the 10th or after the 11th, depending on the timing. That's when I do expect to see that colder air return. We'll have some ups and downs, but I think a lot of ups as compared to downs, meaning that a lot of these days will end up being probably above average going over the next week to week and a half.
Yeah, we're going to be singing songs of spring, and then it's going to come to a halt, and then we'll know better by the middle of the month. But we'll save more of that conversation for the days ahead.
Thank you for joining us on this latest edition of Whether or Not. Have yourself a great day.